Brooding and brood pouch. Next one. Next to streamlined body.
So one of the students asked about what is meant by sexual intercourse. So in most of the organisms, so starting from higher invertebrates, including human beings, all vertebrates and including human beings, the sexual intercourse is nothing but we can also call it as mating. Mating, or we can also call it as in general sex. So sex is nothing but, so what will happen, so that is to be a course or intercourse, or we can also call it as a sexual intercourse between the male and the female. So in general we can call it as sexual intercourse, or we can also call it as sex, or in other words we can also call it as mating. So this is what we called as sexual intercourse. Then followed by another student asked about what is meant by brood pouch. So brood pouch in the sense, for example, in the today's class, you've already heard about this different class fishes. For example, you can take cartilaginous or bonifacious, or you can take some of the amphibians also. Amphibians in the sense, for example, you can take what we call it as frogs, or in some other invertebrates also, you will find this pouch-like structure. So how this bag-like structure will be there? So within that bag, so they can store their egg before hatching. So before hatching, they can store their whatever eggs to be there in these animals. So that pouch-like structures we call as brood pouches. Before hatching, they'll store in that pouch-like structures. And then third, another question. So what is meant by streamlined body? One of the students asked about the streamlined body means. So streamline in the sense a straight cylindrical structure. So some organism, for example, in the previous class, you have already studied about the cyclostomes. Cyclostomata in the sense they have this circular body or with the mouth with a suctorial. Suctorial in the sense you will find a specialized stage in some of the cyclostome. So when you come across body form, so these body will have this cylindrical straight line body will find. So this type of body organisms are we called as a streamlined body. So first one is the sexual intercourse means what, then followed by brood pouch means what, and then followed by streamlined body means what, right?
So one of the student is asking about external fertilization. First, you have to understand fertilization. Here, fertilization means fusion of male and female gametes. So here, male gamete is sperm cell, female gamete is egg. Simple way to understand. So generally, the common thing where the fusion of male and female gametes takes place, we call it as a fertilization. If the fertilization is happening outside the female body, we can say external fertilization. In the name only it is there. Fusion of gametes is taking outside the female body. So this external fertilization outside the female body means in the surrounding environment. Mostly in case of animals, it will be in water only. Generally, external fertilization takes place in water. So you can observe this external fertilization in fishes, amphibians. Example, fishes and amphibians. Internal fertilization, if you see inside the female body, you can observe in mammals. In humans also, internal fertilization. Next, one of the student is asking about male brooding pouch. So brooding pouch for the hatching fertilized eggs. Brooding is the purpose is breeding. Male brooding pouch. Generally, the fertilized eggs will develop inside the female body. Here, the male brooding pouch is one exceptional case I told, which is present in hippocampus. Seahorse. So the function of this brooding pouch is to develop the fertilized eggs, just like hatching. So once the chicken will lay the eggs, and what it will do? It will sit on that, it will do hatching. No? Similarly, in the brooding pouch, where if you see the seahorse, so here one pouch will be there in the seahorse. Particularly male only this pouch will be there. This pouch only we are saying brooding pouch. Now eggs will be there inside this. These eggs will develop and it will deliver the newborn babies. So this you can see in the male hippocampus. Exceptional case. Generally it will be within the female. One exceptional cases you can find in the bony fish hippocampus.
Good morning, students. So one of the students has asked about the functions of the placoid scales and the cycloid scales. So the scales in Pisces, they may be of different types. So as in case of the cartilaginous fishes, the placoid scales are there. So these placoid scales, these are somewhat narrow, and its end is somewhat, it is a tapering one side, it is somewhat pointed ones. It is like this. So where the pointed ends we are going to observe. So these pointed ends of the scales, they are opens to the exterior part of the skin, so that it gives somewhat the rough surface to the skin. So if you observe in sharp, so where the surface of the skin is somewhat, it is a rough surface. This is mainly because of the pointed placoid scales, they are exposed to the onto the surface of the skin. So that's why it gives the rough surface, and its main function is the protection, and also it prevents the water. It prevents the entry of water into the body. So that is the main function of the placoid scales, and also it's play a vital role in the protection also. Then in osteophyte species, as in case of bony fishes, the cycloid type as well as the ctenoid type of scales are there. Cycloid as well as the ctenoid type of scales are there. These scales, they are somewhat differ compared to the placoid scales. So these scales, they are somewhat the possessing the blended end, not the pointed end. They do not possessing the pointed end. They are possessing the blended ends. Blended ends means it is somewhat, it is the flat. The first type of the scales we are going to observe as in case of the bony fishes. So these scales are play a vital role in protection. That is the difference between the placoid scales as well as the cycloid scales. Next. So Mr. Sangmesh has asked about ognathos, that is ognathos stomata individuals. It mainly possessing the two main classes. So one is the class Cyclostomata, and the second one is the class Ostracodermi. So this Ostracodermi class individuals, these are already extincted ones. They are mainly possessing the archinephric kidney. They are mainly possessing the archinephric kidney. This class includes the organisms which are already extincted ones. They are mainly possessing the primitive characters, the primitive expressions. They are expressing the ancestral characters. They were expressing about the ancestral characters. The such type of best example for the ancestral character is the presence of the archinephric kidney. Archinephric kidney is only possessing only tubular type of the nephron units within the kidney. So this is ostracodermy, class ostracodermy. So already the group of these individuals, they are already extincted ones, but the existing ones are the only one group, that is class cyclostomata. This is class cyclostomata which mainly possessing the organisms which are possessing the suctorial mouth part. Suctorial mouth. Okay, they do not possessing any jaws. The jaws are not there. That's why they are possessing the suctorial mouth. This is one of the difference between the orgnathostomata as well as gnathostomata, and the two main classes of this orgnathostomata are the ostracodermy and another one is the cyclostomata. Next, migration. So one of the students has asked about give an example for whether the marine fishes they are go for they are migrate for they are migrate to the river freshwater farm for laying egg cells. Yes. So we are going to observe the two types of the migration, especially in the fishes, anadromous as well as catadromous. In anadromous type of migration, so where the individuals which are living in marine form, so these individuals they are migrated towards the freshwater form, marine water to freshwater. So best example for this one is the sardines. The sardines are migrate. So during the breeding season, these sardines they are migrate from the marine water to the fresh water for laying the egg cells. For laying the egg cells. So where this type of migration is called as anadromous migration, and another one is the catadromous. In catadromous migration, where we are going to observe the freshwater form individuals, they are migrate towards the marine form. They are migrate towards marine form. That is the difference between anadromous as well as catadromous.
So one of the student is asking about oviparous. Here, the oviparous means how the parents are getting reproduced. So by what method? Oviparous. So the parents are laying, what are the female parent which is laying eggs in simple way. So such kind of organisms we can say the oviparous organisms. Example best way you can see fishes, amphibians, reptiles, including birds also. These are oviparous organisms. And one of the student is asking homocircle and heterocircle. Homocircle fins, you have to add complete word. Heterocircle fin. Here, in case of cartilage fishes, if you see the caudal fin. So earlier I told you the caudal fin, whatever the tail fin is there. If you see the tail fin two portions, the internal and external structures are not in equal size. You can see one half, second half. So the first one, second one, if you see, both are completely different in size. So they are completely different in size from internally, externally. Such kind of thing you can say heterocircle. So in cartilage fishes, you can see the heterocircle. So opposite, homocircle. So where you can see the caudal fin. So both the halves, you can see the two halves of the caudal fin, upper and lower portions, internally and externally, they are equal in size, morphologically, structurally similar. So those things we can say homocircle. Homocircle you can observe in bony fishes. Heterocircle in cartilage fishes, homocircle in bony fishes. And one of the student is asking piranhas. So out of the textbook you are asking, the piranhas are nothing but bony fishes only. Piranhas are bony fishes. Sir, any other thing? So one of the student is asking about the brackish water. Right. So here, if you see, seawater we call marine, river we call freshwater. Here brackish water means where the river is joining into the sea. So the opening of the river, if you see the river, if it is joining to the sea, so here the water will be mixed type with the fresh water and marine water. Such kind of areas, so we can say marshy areas with the area you can call marshy area and the water is brackish type. Okay, so where the river is joining into the sea, there the water is called brackish water.
So now the student asked about development in fishes. So in the previous classes also, if you have studied about this development. So development are of mainly two types. Either it may be a direct or it may be a indirect. So in most of the cases, in most of the invertebrate organisms, you will find indirect development. So indirect development in the sense by undergoing one or many larval forms. For example, starting from conifer onwards till the end of echinodermata. So almost all the invertebrate organisms should be exhibiting one or more larval forms. So this type of development we call as indirect development. Like that only you can take then lower vertebrates and then followed by higher vertebrates, for example. So now we are discussing about fishes. So in fishes usually development will be direct. So direct in the sense in fishes you will not find any larval forms. So next to that, fishes you will find only in amphibia. In almost all the tetrapods you will find direct development only except this amphibians. In amphibia, development may be indirect. For example, you can take in frogs, you will find a tadpole larva. Or you can take some other amphibians, you will find different larval form. Except that amphibia, but remaining all, for example, fishes you can take, or reptiles you can take, or apes you can take, or you can take mammalia. In these four class animals, you will find only this direct development. You have to remember that while differentiating the cartilage and bony fishes, you have to remember common point, development will be direct in both cartilage and bony fishes. So next one followed by when you take fertilization. So fertilization will differ in these two type of fishes. For example, you can take in cartilaginous fishes. So cartilaginous fishes you will find fertilization is internal. Internal in the sense the fusion of male and gamete, both male and female gametes taking place within the body of an organism. We are calling it as fertilization is internal. Like that only you can take that in bony fishes or in osteonthites. You will find fertilization is external. External in the sense instead of within the fusion, instead of within the body of an organism. So this fusion is taking place in the medium. So medium in the sense usually aquatic medium. So if the fertilization is taking place in the aquatic medium. So outside the body of an organism, we are calling it as fertilization is external. So this type of fertilization usually you will find it bonifacious. So, for example, you can take in cartilaginous fishes, you asked, no? So one best example for this direct development in cartilaginous fishes means first you can take that example as a scoliodon. So scoliodon, or we can also call it as a dogfish, or we can also call it as a shark. So in this type of animals, they can directly give birth to the young ones without undergoing any larval form. So this type of development we call as a direct type of development.
Which fish are eligible